Okay, we're live. It's Monday. Here we are on ThinkTech Global, and we're talking about FTZ9. And this is an update on FTZ9, and I'll tell you about in a minute what that stands for. And David Sikkink, who is the administrator of FTZ9, is here with me. Hi, David.
Hi, Jay. Good to be here.
Good to be here.
Good to see you again.
Thank you for coming down. So, we need to examine FTZ9 every now and then, find out what you're doing because you're very active. Last I knew is you had done a complete remodel of your premises down there.
Well, we did a portion of it. It was a really exciting project. It was a $10.5 million project. A good portion of that was funded by the EDA, the federal EDA, so we have federal money involved with it, as well as state reimbursable GO bonds. So in a sense, we got a loan to pay that money back, but it's a really exciting future event for the Foreign Trade Zone as we now move forward. What we did is we actually took, and I don't know how many people actually know about our facility down at Pier 2, but we're that long shed building you see if you go by the Pier 2 terminal harbor there for the cruise ships.
Right across Waterfront
right across,
Plaza. Yeah.
Yep, right across from the federal building and the Waterfront Plaza as well. And what we did is we took a portion, actually the Malka portion of that facility, and turned it into a set of offices. Much like we have in the center of the facility, we have 40 offices in the center. We now took that and put that on the Malka end, so now we have 40 additional offices for 80 offices total. And it's a really exciting project before us because that not only allows us to expand our program, but that also offer our services to those companies who do import-export or in some way support import-export throughout the state. That can be anything from maritime people to customs brokers, shipping people, logistics agents, all of those who help facilitate that import-export arm of our economy. And so we're very excited. We actually took possession of the facility as of January 1. So we are now just starting to get our tenants in there. One of our main tenants, I'm going to be kind of jumping the gun here a little bit. Hopefully I don't get in too much trouble for it.
It's a scoop. We're going to get a
It's going to be a
right
scoop
now.
right here on ThinkTech. McCabe, Hamilton, and Remy are moving into our facility. So they're moving down. Yep, major stevedores union is moving down to our facility. We're excited to have them here. They're moving not only their offices, but they're moving their credit union as well. So it's going to be a very active place down in Pier 2 coming up very quickly here. Right now, like I said, we have about 80 offices down there and a conference center. That's another exciting component to this particular build out. We have a conference room that's large enough to hold about 150 people.
Now that's a conference room.
That's a pretty good size, and we have the facilities to be able to support that. So we're excited by this particular venture. And again, that's another component to what we're doing as well. And the idea behind that is to get more activity in terms of import-export and those people talking about it, whether it's seminars or education. As you know, HPU is moving in just down the street at Aloha Tower, and that's more than, a 5-minute walk to our facility. We'd love to have them there to do import-export training or some sort of seminars or any type of teaching that they would do. And even if they need to use our facilities for other ventures, we would more than welcome them as well to be able to do that. So we have the conference center. We have 40 offices on that end of the building. Right now we're about 60% capacity. We've had pre-sales up to 60%, so we have a fair amount of offices still left, anywhere from about 250 square feet up to about 635, I think is the largest office we have available on that end. So a real nice facility. We've had just about everybody who's come down to see it has had nothing but praise for it. It's an exciting venture for us.
So who are I'm trying to imagine. So is a warehouse space in there as well?
There is. Our Pier 2 facility, actually, like I said, we had the offices, the main offices in the central portion of the facility. Then the remainder of that Malka end of the facility was the warehouse. And it is an active foreign trade zone. And you and I will talk about that probably in a little bit here. But it is an active foreign trade zone. What we did was took the Malka end of that facility, and the way that building was built back in 1954, it was actually designed to have offices in it. It had all the rebar sticking out of the walls to put in the supports. It had literally windows along the top that had doors, like office doors, to be able to go in and out of the lanai up there. So it was all set for it. They just never put the facility together to be able to do offices down there. And after, about 60 years now, we've actually brought that to fruition. So now that we have offices in that facility that was originally designed for it. We had been using it for warehouse space prior to that.
So warehouse, offices, conference room, anything else?
That's about it.
That's enough.
That's enough. That keeps us more than busy.
So what exactly is the Foreign Trade Zone program? I mean, what governmental organizations put it together? Who does it serve exactly? How is it funded and so forth? Can you give us a précis?
Okay, a little bit of a primer on how a foreign trade zone works. Foreign trade zone was a program that was developed by the U.S. federal government back in 1934 as a reaction to the Smoot-Hawley Act. There were a lot of companies saying, look, you put up a lot of tariffs and a lot of barriers for people to be able to do, import or export of goods. What can we do to offset that to make it more competitive for U.S. companies? Well, that's when they developed the Foreign Trade Zone program. And that program essentially allows us as a grantee, and I'll get into that in just a little bit, but as a federal government arm or agency, if you will, we're not federal, by the way, we're a state agency, to be able to designate certain areas with the federal government support that are considered outside U.S. territory for customs and duties purposes. That means that I can bring in foreign goods into that area, store them in the foreign trade zone, and do one of two things. I can either use them for export, in other words, send them out to a foreign port, at which point I'd never pay the duties and taxes on it, or I can declare them when I want to and then bring them in for U.S. consumption. This works really well for manufacturers, those people in the manufacturing industry, because what that allows them to do, like let's say I'm an automaker, I can bring in all those foreign car parts, put them into a final automobile and bring them out at the automobile's final rate as opposed to all the various car parts that I would if I had to bring them in, declare them, and then do the manufacturing of my automobile. As you know, automobile parts are very high tariff rates on them, especially those coming from Mexico or say Germany or some of the other places throughout the world. So this makes it very easy for those companies to be able to bring them in, keep them in what's called bond or foreign state, develop their car out of that, and then bring that in as the car's duty rate as opposed to the various auto parts. So that offers two things. One, it offers a lower tariff rate when they bring the final product in. And two, it also offsets the cost. So instead of me having to pay those duties and taxes up front, I can then offset that for, say, 3 to 6 months before I'd have to pay them. And if you're doing a volume business, you can see that over time, that's going to save you a significant amount of money, especially on those goods who are, or that do have a very high tariff.
So you can do manufacturing in the zone.
Absolutely. Yep. That's a special designation. There's actually 3 types of foreign trade zone designations that you can get. One is the one for manufacturing. So you have to have a special designation or an authority, what it's called, by the Foreign Trade Zones Board in Washington, D.C. to be able to manufacture in a foreign trade zone. The second is a warehouse, and that's what we are down on Pier 2, is a general, what's called a general purpose warehouse, where you can store goods, keep them in bond, and then bring them in when you want to, whatever product that may be.
And that doesn't have to be foreign goods. That could be any goods?
It can be mixed. Actually, foreign trade zones can be mixed goods. It can be domestic and foreign, but the benefit that you get out of the program is the foreign component of that, the duty and tax deferral. The third is refinery, and that's the beauty of both of our refineries and why they're allowed to operate or be able to operate at least at some cost-effective manner here on the islands, is because they can bring in that foreign crude, they can then distill it into the various products such as airline fuel, boat bunker fuel, or car fuel, and then use that fuel let's say an airplane comes in from Japan bringing tourists and bringing business people here. They can put that in bond onto that airplane again and send it back out to the foreign destination and not have to pay the duties and taxes on that foreign product as they would here in the United States.
Was Campbell an industrial, rather a trade zone also?
Right, and that's what we did. Back in 1965, Governor John Burns decided that it would be a good idea to have that program here. So he set Homer Maxey, who was the original foreign trade zone administrator, out on a mission to get a foreign trade zone here in Hawaii. So he did that. He was able to establish that. So in 1966, we began as Foreign Trade Zone number 9. And that number is very important. You think, well, Foreign Trade Zone number 9, that's not a real big designation. It is actually a very big designation. That means that from 1934, when the program began, to 1966, there were only 8 other foreign trade zones that were running in the United States. Today, there are 268 foreign trade zones throughout all of the United States, one at least in each individual state, and I think 3 in Puerto Rico. And so, they go as high as 266. We are number 9, which means we are one of the oldest and most respected foreign trade zones in the nation. So that's how the longevity that this particular program has. And a lot of the other foreign trade zones look to us because we're kind of an anomaly. Not only are we a grantee, so in other words, we are given by the federal government, the state of Hawaii, a grant to be able to operate and designate areas as foreign trade zones throughout the state, but then we're also an operator. So that allows us to operate our warehouse at Pier 2 and do a service for those people who are doing import-export within the state. Now, you talked about James Campbell being a foreign trade zone. When we started back in 1966, we were looking for strategic areas that were called magnet sites, where we could bring companies in that could utilize and benefit foreign trade zone services. So they decided back then that James Campbell Industrial Park would be one of those areas. So they designated all of that park as a foreign trade zone. And so far, we have not only the 2 refineries out there, but then Pacific Allied Products are the ones that make the recyclable bottles as a foreign trade zone as well. So it's a good project out there. So any company that does manufacture or can potentially benefit from foreign trade zone activity is allowed to operate under foreign trade zone through us as we help them get the grant for activation and approval out there.
And any other foreign trade zone areas in the state?
We do. We have Pier 2, which is kind of our headquarters down there, our Pier 2 shed facility. Mililani Tech Park is considered a foreign trade zone. It's the land is designated a foreign trade zone. We don't have any active companies there. When Maui Land and Pine was doing the canning process over in Maui, that was considered a foreign trade zone, or is designated a foreign trade zone, as well as the Maui Tech Park out there. The convention center is a foreign trade zone. Now, if they want to do some sort of imported good show or some sort of I guess a show, they can utilize that, and they just have to come to us to designate them or activate them as foreign trade zone. They'd have to go through Customs and Border Protection along with us to be able to show that all the goods that were brought in as foreign component would remain that way, and none would bleed into the U.S. economy.
So you can you have the power. FTZ9 has the power to spawn new facilities really anywhere in the state.
Right, right. So let's say, in this case, like Nelha, that's also, the Big Island is also a foreign trade zone. If there were another area within, to say, Hilo or even in the Kona area that wanted to become a foreign trade zone, what they would do is they'd work through us, and we'd help them do what's called an application that we'd then present to the Foreign Trade Zones Board in Washington, D.C. The board members would review that particular application, look for any economic benefit that could utilize foreign trade zone, and if they so designated, they would say, okay, that is a good project, we're going to designate that area as foreign trade zone, and then work to activate with Customs and Border Protection that area so that the company could benefit foreign trade zone practices.
So the test is whether this would facilitate trade.
It would be foreign trade as well as some sort of economic development or some sort of economic stimulus for the area.
For the area, namely the area where this facility is located.
Exactly, exactly.
Have you ever decommissioned a given zone?
We actually did. Unfortunately, as I was talking about Maui Land and Pine, they were doing their canning facilities on Maui up until probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And unfortunately, they decided, you know, we can no longer afford to do the canning here. It doesn't make financial sense anymore. So we deactivated them as a foreign trade zone. What you essentially have to do is assert that anything in there that was foreign is either declared and brought in to U.S. In other words, duties and taxes are paid on it, or they're shipped out or destroyed some way so they're no longer usable.
We're going to take a short break, David, and then we come back. I'd like to talk about how you do all that, because it doesn't sound very easy.
It's a process, but once the company does become foreign trade zone, they benefit very greatly from it.
David Sikkink, he's the administrator of FTZ9, Foreign Trade Zone number 9, a special and very senior foreign trade zone in the federal foreign trade zone system. This is ThinkTech Global, and we're updating on FTZ9. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with David Sikkink, administrator of FTZ9. That's Foreign Trade Zone number 9 in the foreign trade zone system around the country. This is ThinkTech Global. We're updating on FTZ9. So, you know, you described a number of facilities, and, you know, an essential element in all of this is the bondable part, I guess, and that is keeping it safe, keeping it contained. being responsible that it doesn't leak out either way.
Right.
How do you do that? It doesn't sound easy.
Well, it's not easy. That's one of the things that we have to work with when we look to designate a company for foreign trade zone, like Pacific Allied Products or even our Pier 2 facility. What we need to do is to work with Customs and Border Protection to show that their requirements for a bonded area within a foreign trade zone are met to their standards. And they are pretty stringent. They want to make sure, and that's the key thing. Anything that bleeds from a foreign trade zone or anything outside the United States that bleeds into U.S. territory without, going through customs or some sort of customs procedure, what happens is that's smuggling. That's considered smuggling, and in doing such, there's some pretty heavy fines and penalties that are afforded to that.
Including jail time and all that.
Including jail time. So in terms of a company being able to operate foreign trade zone, they have to be very, very prudential about putting together a foreign trade zones manual so that they have all inventory management items covered.
Manual for each participant, each company that participates.
Each company that participates. We have a manual on each one, and it says, this is my procedures, here's what I'm going to do, here's how I'm going to do them, here's my accounting procedures with them, here's my inventory management procedures with that. So all of that has to be developed, and that's what we work with the company to be able to develop that. And then we present it to Customs and Border Protection, and really they're the ones that make that decision to say, okay, we've overseen your not only facility there in terms of your security that you have there, but then we've also looked at your manuals and your procedures, and we approve the fact that you should be able to be a foreign trade zone.
Well, this is very interesting because, we've all seen enough movies about smuggling.
Mm-hmm.
And about warehouses that are broken into in the middle of the night,
Yep.
And they find all kinds of valuable things there, and it gets involved in smuggling. So, it seems to me that that's a really good idea to put the obligation on the participating company, at least the primary obligation,
Right.
And then check those procedures and then make sure those procedures are being followed. But you can't stand there with a flashlight all night and watch them.
No.
You have to find a way to step in and be. It's like the restaurant approval.
Right.
You go there on a spot basis, check them out, and if every time you appear on a spot basis, they're in compliance, you can make some conclusions about the rest of the time.
Right, and that's really where we kind of differentiate from us and, us being the foreign trade zone grantee and Customs and Border Protection. We're the facilitator. In other words, we work with that company to be able to get them active in foreign trade zone and utilizing foreign trade zone practices and procedures. It's Customs and Border Protection who will do the spot check, who may show up and say, okay, let's take a look at your facilities here. Do you have the required security in place here? Do you have the required procedures in place here? What are you doing with any excess? Do you have any material that you have damaged and you need to discard? That's another benefit of foreign trade zone. Let's say I'm an importer and I'm importing widgets, and let's say for some reason 10% of my widgets are unusable. Now, if I were an importer and I'd have to declare the taxes and duties up front, I'd have to pay for them even though they were damaged goods, and then I'd have to go back and say I can't use these.
No refund on that.
There'd be no refund on that. In a foreign trade zone, what you can say is, okay, I've got 10% bad here. We can show them to Customs. Customs will say, okay, we're going to destroy those, and watch as you destroy them, those goods. And at that point, you would never pay the duties and taxes on them because there's no chance of them ever leaking into the United States as a
huge
valuable
benefit
product.
for the importer.
Huge benefit for them because they're not paying those costs up front. Those are monies, as a business person. I've owned actually three businesses of my own in the past. And I know the old adage, a dollar today is worth more than it is tomorrow. So if I can retain my money now and be able to put it into my resources, into my personnel, into my facilities, whether it's in terms of capital improvements or, equipment purchases, why not? Why not be able to use that money in that capacity than to have to pay the duties and taxes and not get that money back for maybe even up to a year, depending on what my cycle is when it comes to manufacturing or bringing my goods through the foreign trade zone or through my business.
So I'm starting to get the picture that Customs, Border Patrol are going to do security. Do they do the security on the building in general, or just on the specific participating corporations? Who does the building? Do you do the building?
What we do is we go and we recommend what they need. In other words, we look at the customs regulations for them and say, okay, you're going to need fencing that's this high. It has to have barbed wire, concertina wire on it. You have to have these type of controls interior to make sure that your security is up to snuff. in terms of people coming and going. You have to have procedures of who can and cannot enter the foreign trade zone. If you do, what are the logging procedures of those people coming and going? So there's a lot involved there. So we essentially assist the company to be able to do that. What they do is then they implement all of those items that we've requested. And once we've had a chance to look at them, then we say, okay, Customs and Border Protection, we have a new client here. We'd like you to come out and take a look at them, see whether or not they're in compliance with your regulations. And Customs will come out and actually do a spot check and say, okay, we're looking at this particular fencing. Oh, your fencing is not high enough. Or no, you didn't put barbed wire at the top of that, or you don't have it this particular way. So they're the ones who would actually do the recommendation. If they do look at it and say, okay, all of this looks really good, then they'll write off and say, we concur that this should be a foreign trade zone and they can begin operations as of this particular date.
Yeah, so you're kind of like the coordinator about
We're the
that.
coordinator. We're the ones that help facilitate, and we're the intermediary between not only that client, but the Foreign Trade Zones Board in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And they're very stringent as to how foreign trade zones operate.
Right.
Again, they have to be not only as a federal agency, but again, because we're dealing with goods that come from outside the country.
So it sounds like you have plenty of sanctions against a corporation doesn't want to, an importer company, participant in the program, who doesn't want to follow the rules or
Right.
follow his own
Right.
plan. You pull his approval,
Right.
and he's out of luck.
Right, and that's one of the other things of being a foreign trade zone. If for some reason they're not following the policies or procedures, not only will Customs potentially deactivate them, but we as the grantee could also deactivate them. And in doing such, if there's any goods that are in that warehouse or in that facility that are still in bond, they automatically go out of bond. So they have to pay the duties and taxes immediately on them. It's as if it were shipped in and they have to pay it immediately, and that could be millions of dollars.
And of
in
course,
inventory.
those goods are subject to that duty. So if
At
you
that
don't
time.
pay the duty, you don't get your goods. Right?
Exactly.
Now, that's
Exactly.
a sanction.
Right, and it could be subject to seizure. If they decide, well, we're not going to pay, Customs could come in and seize it and lock down the facility. So there's some pretty heavy sanctions against not playing by the rules.
You have all the control in the world.
Right.
And now there's also a waterfront issue about terrorism and all that. These goods coming from far away, they're wrapped up, and I assume that the Border Protection people and the Customs people are investigating every container, every parcel that comes into the
They
foreign
do.
trade zone
They
to make
do.
sure that it's safe, yeah?
Right, they do. That's one of their components, again, in terms of being Customs and Border Protection. All of those cans that come in international, they're checked out. They want to make sure. I mean, a lot of them, they go through an X-ray process. And if for some reason they see an anomaly, they'll pull that can and they bring it to an inspection station where they'll literally take the whole can out if they deem necessary to look for whatever that particular item is, if they think it's contraband or something that could be even more nefarious, in terms of national security. So they do an excellent job, especially here in the Port of Honolulu, making sure that we not only remain safe, but the goods coming in are the ones that are said on that manifest when it comes in on the shipping documents. The other item is that they are now working for what's called a trusted shipping or trusted shipper or trusted logistics chain. So let's say you have something that's coming from China, you can actually do an application that goes all the way back to that supplier. And if they know that's a known supplier, that's a good, trustworthy sender or exporter, they then can verify that chain all the way to your office to make sure that those goods, when they're coming in, actually are fast-tracked to you, so you get them much quicker than you would if they have to go through that whole customs examination procedure.
Yeah, that's like when you get inspected in Vancouver, as a person, right?
Right.
So you don't have to get inspected again when you come into the country. It's
Exactly.
smart, yeah.
Right.
So I just wonder, years ago, I don't know if this ever happened, but there was an electronic system under consideration by the Coast Guard where every container, I don't know if you deal with containers per se, like on ships, that size of container, where every container had an electronic device and signature, and you could tell where it had been and when it had been opened and so forth. Do you have anything like that now, electronic systems?
In terms of our knowledge, there potentially could be, but that would probably be removed at the dock.
As part of the customs
As part of the
process.
customs process, right. When we get the container, it's usually ready to go. In other words, there's still a seal on that container that says it hasn't been opened unless customs have a reason to open that. But otherwise, we get the container, and usually it's shipped from the shipyard to our facility in bond. In other words, there's a bonded driver that takes that from point A to point B, and we're literally right around the corner, so it's probably a quarter of a mile drive in order to get from the Pier 1 international port to our facility at Pier 2.
So, are you full up, David? I mean, is this maxed out? I know it's new and it's just
Right.
expanded and all that, but if I called you up and said, look, I want to import some stuff and it's voluminous and do you have space for me? Because I'm going to leave it there a little bit. Do you have space?
We actually do. We were, for the last few years, very near 100% capacity in our warehouse. We've had a lot of people doing import and export business, which is very good for the state. In terms of what we have now, we found that a lot of companies have gone to just-in-time shipping, so a lot of it comes in and goes out very quickly. So we have a lot of turnover as well. But in terms of anybody who is interested in bringing goods in or is looking for additional space to be able to warehouse their goods, we certainly do have the space available to do that. We've had a lot of inquiries, probably in the last, I would say, 6 months of people looking for warehouse space. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I think...
Are your renovations part of the reason?
That's part of the reason, because people are now looking at us, and we've got a little bit better profile, a bigger profile now. In terms of
Well,
what
you're
we
on
now have to
ThinkTech
offer.
for one
But
thing.
here we are, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this is great, great publicity for us. But not only because of the new office space that we have available, but because of the program itself and what it has to offer people in terms of import, export, and that's kind of the third component of what we do. You know, not only are we a foreign trade zone, we're the grantee, but then we offer import, export assistance. We have connections of people who do import, export as their business. In other words, you know, shipping people. We have logistics people. We have customs brokers. Customs brokers are the key person when it comes to doing import, export, especially import, because they're the ones that act almost as your attorney in terms of being able to properly classify those goods that are coming in, as well as making sure that the documents are filed correctly with Customs and Border Protection.
Sometimes they have to advocate for you.
And they do.
In cases of irregularity of some kind, they have to
Right.
go into the ring for you.
Right, they're the ones that would actually go to bat for you, because they're saying, we're classifying it as this particular type of item because we see it as X, Y, and Z, and this is why it would. So they'd have to justify to Customs why they do that. So in a sense, they kind of act as your attorney and kind of your buffer in order to make sure, it's like doing your taxes. You could do them yourself, but if you have a tax accountant, they're the ones that will not only be responsible in terms of if there's an audit or something that comes down from the IRS, but they're also the ones that make sure that they're done correctly. They know how to file, they know how to classify something, so when it comes to making sure that all of your taxes are done correctly, that's what a customs broker does. They make sure that all of your import documents are done correctly.
Well, we'll take a short break, but I'd like to focus when we come back on what it's like for the client. Client approaches you, what's the scenario, how can you help him, what kind of experience does he have in building you know, an import-export business, and you know, I'd like to talk to you about where that fits in the economy, in the growth of the economy, and how important it is you know, to offer these services in order to grow those import-export businesses. That's David Sikkink. He's the administrator of FTZ number 9. Which is right down opposite Waterfront Plaza.
Right across the street from Waterfront Plaza and the Federal Building at Pier 2.
Right there, you can see it from Ala Moana. This is ThinkTech Global. We're updating on FTZ9. We'll be right back.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Paul Jackson, better known as PJ, and my local interest is in sports. I have my own sports radio show at KWAI AM 1080 that you can stream live. I also have my own website, pjsportsradio.com. We have live guests in studio, and we talk about discussions and topics that everyone wants to know locally here on the islands. We cover everything from surfing to basketball to whatever's going on locally, sports-wise. We try to do our best and cover the topics in depth as much as we can. Once again, thank you for joining PJ here on Hawaii Sports Update. Mahalo.
Okay, we're live. We're back. We're here with David Sikkink, the administrator of FTZ number 9, which is the Foreign Trade Zone number 9. And we're updating on the Foreign Trade Zone number 9 because lots of things have been happening with David. And here we are on ThinkTech Global on a given Monday. Monday's always so special. So David, you know, all this talk for years, decades, about how we want our young people to get involved in entrepreneurial activities. And we tell them, go into tech, go into science, there's any number of things, get together, collaborate, co-work, whatever it is. Try to make a business that will, brighten up Hawaii's economy and make it less of a mono economy in tourism.
Right.
And you fit right in there. You're right in there, except I don't think people associate you necessarily with tech and science and all that. So can you talk about how an import-export business can satisfy the need that we're talking about?
Sure. There's an initiative that started a couple of years ago within DBED, and that's one of the things I neglected to say earlier, is that we actually are a division of DBED. We're one of the core divisions of the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. And so our mission as part of that arm or that particular portion of state government is to help those companies who are interested in growing and becoming a business here in the state of Hawaii. And so as part of that, we started taking down a lot of the silos. As you know, a lot of these divisions and agencies were working in silos, all kind of doing the same thing, but at different angles. And so what we decided to do is take down those barriers, start looking for companies where there were synergies between the two. Like, let's say there's a company that's doing manufacturing and is in conversation with High Tech Development Corporation and their manufacturing extension program. Let's say, you know what, you might be a good candidate for foreign trade zone. Let's get you connected with David over the foreign trade zone, or one of the people over there that can help you grow your company. So we've been slowly starting to take down those barriers and working with other companies or other agencies. One of our sister agencies, Nelha on the Big Island, they do a lot of export business. How can foreign trade zone help them in terms of doing their export business or give them the resources they need? So what we're doing is starting to pool those resources, connect those dots, if you will, from those agencies and companies to be able to grow and develop another arm of the economic sectors here in Hawaii, because we have been so dependent on tourism, and during the downturn in the economy, we saw that actually affects businesses all across the board. So what can we do to start to bolster those other arms? And as you know, there's been some talk that tourism is kind of maxed out in terms of what they can provide in terms of growth.
Yes.
So what we need to do is find other sectors of the economy that we can start to grow, and really tech is one of those areas that we're really focusing on DBED to be able to grow. That and the creative sectors. Those are the companies that are innovative in terms of thinking and developing the intellectual property that we would then grow companies out of here in Hawaii. So we're starting to work on that end. And so let's say that there is a company that is viable. Let's say High Tech Development Corporation has found a company that would be very well suited to the foreign trade zone. We work as sister agencies to be able to connect those dots, bring that company in, and then start to give them the support mechanisms they need to be able to not only develop as a high-tech company, but then one that could utilize foreign trade zone.
But can I define something with you? Mm-hmm. If I build a like they were doing last weekend at the hackathon, if I build a mobile, program that will fit on a cell phone anywhere in the world, and that can be downloaded anywhere in the world, and which doesn't require you to stand up in order to, buy it and use it and all that. There's no physical piece moving anywhere. There's no manufacturing, at least by the developer of the app. Now, I need a physical piece to take advantage of the foreign trade zone, right? Or do you get involved if it's merely software?
Right. That's kind of the I guess the direction that we're starting to push right now, because manufacturing has been, at least the term manufacturing, we always thought that was hard good, widgets, things that we're developing or making. That actually, the definition of that has expanded out to include those that are in intellectual property. So what we're offering as part of our component of that is area within our foreign trade zone, new office space that is co-working space.
Oh, for the company.
So companies can come in and really work in that area. We're hoping to get like a 3D printer down there. So if they're developing ideas or goods that they may need some sort of a prototype, that they'd be able to come to our facility, be able to use that 3D printer and be able to print out that final good to see, okay, is this work, is this viable, is this something that we can do? And then the idea of that is, okay, if it then becomes a manufacturing product, is there an area that we could then shift them to foreign trade zones so they could be able to utilize our facility? The other aspect is that we're also working on manufacturing, so with young manufacturers. Again, those are people who are looking into prototyping and developing their good, and to be able to offer space within our warehouse. We're actually going to carve out probably about 10 to 15,000 square feet of our warehouse to be able to accommodate companies who have an idea. There's that venture area where you might have a prototype or at least an initial idea, but you're not big enough to have your own warehouse and your own manufacturing space. Where's that gap? Well, that's what we're looking to do at Foreign Trade Zones, to be able to fill that gap, bring companies in who can be able to operate. They don't necessarily have to use Foreign Trade Zone practices at this point, but again, the idea would be in the future, maybe we could shift them in that idea if they're looking for some component parts that are coming in foreign.
Oh, that's
so
such-
we're going to be opening up those areas to be able to allow those companies, that gap, to be able to build and design and develop their processes and their procedures and their products, and then be able to move on from there. Hopefully at some point they get to a point where, we need to move out. We're too big for the Foreign Trade Zone. You helped us grow. We're now looking for our own warehouse. Maybe that's in Campbell, or maybe that's in Kaka'ako. Where that's going to be, we don't know.
Yeah. So you said that the max size office space was about 600 feet or so?
About 650 feet, right?
Yeah, so that would be slightly bigger than our studio.
feet.
It's not
Yep.
that big.
Not that big, yeah.
And
It
that's
does
good,
get
that's
pretty
the way
tight.
it should be.
Right.
Because then they get to graduate after they exceed that size.
Right, so we've kind of come out of the incubation stage, and we're now in that growth stage to be able to help those companies who have a solid product, they're ready to go, but they just can't afford the space yet. And we offer that, not necessarily at a discount, but at competitive rates that would be essentially below market rate, so they could get up on their feet and then move into a market rate.
It's benefiting, even if it's competitive rates
Right.
and not
Right.
below market rates, it's still a benefit of being there with you, being able to, like
Right.
any co-working space, be able to compare notes with people, especially people in the import-export business.
Right.
Especially if they're importing, exporting. But I gotta say, I'm really impressed with that, because co-working space is very valuable,
Right.
wherever it is.
Right.
And this is like HTDC on steroids, because you're down in town, you're in Kaka'ako, although I think they're gonna be in Kaka'ako in a
They
few
will be
years.
shortly, yeah.
We'd follow them closely on that. And you allow people to develop import-export business from the ground up. So the scenario that I would think of, by the way, are there extra spaces there right now today?
There are spaces that we do have available for
Okay, and
companies
how
who want
can
to
they
come down.
how can they contact
What you can do, you can contact us at the Foreign Trade Zone. You can look us up on the web. We're at www.f as in Frank, T as in Tango, Z as in Zephyr, the number 9.org. And there's some information as to our facility, what we have in terms of available rents and leases, and then also our tariff in terms of storing goods at our warehouse. If you want to contact us, you can certainly do that. We're at 586-2507, I believe is the number there, or our business office at 586-2510. And both of those will be able to help you out in terms of being able to connect with us and get you into our facility. We have 3 branches of our offices. It's the administrative portion of it, which oversees the Foreign Trade Zone component and getting companies Foreign Trade Zone throughout the state. It's our business office, which helps to those companies to get into office space or facilities lease at our facility. And the third is our operations branch, and that branch actually helps companies do the warehousing end of it as well. We like to see ourselves kind of as the Silicon Valley, if you will, of Hawaii in terms of import-export initiative in the state. And the reason why I say that is that we start bringing all these different companies together, and what you see out of that are companies that start to talk together. Oh, you do this type of business. Well, I do this type of business. What can I do to help you? We've seen companies actually merge together and be able to bring in products that are different. One company that was doing imports from China. They were doing plastic imports with another surfboard manufacturer who was doing exports. They started talking and said, you know what, why don't we do a joint project where we can develop and build a stand-up paddleboard that's made out of plastics. It's designed specifically for the rental market, because the surfboard manufacturer was seeing all these boards come back to him dinged up after a week or two, because they'd rent them out to those people who may not have a lot of experience on stand-up paddleboards. They got together with the plastics manufacturer. Next thing you know, we're bringing in this particular item that was designed specifically for the rental market that is pretty much indestructible when it comes to hitting reef or rock or whatever. So again, that's what we're looking for, those companies that can start to work synergistically together. And you're not going to get that unless you bring them all together in one place.
Right, and then it's an international synergism in terms of the manufacturer. But,
Right.
but my scenario would be, and we had a show about this a few days ago. So I have this bright idea for a gizmo that fits, a physical gizmo that fits on my phone and allows me to do something better with it. Whether we had one with turned into binoculars, which I thought was interesting. There's binoculars, and your camera goes through the binoculars. Now you can take a binocular picture using your cell phone.
Right.
That was one example. But there's a lot of people who come up with gizmos that go around cell phones. So I could take space from you in the co-working space, and I could design my gizmo. And I could do that for a while. You know, I mean, I have to have a little money to pay the rent, and the staff, but I have to, you know, I design my gizmo. Now I'm happy with my gizmo. You're going to help me connect up with somebody in China, maybe, you know, who will manufacture the gizmo. And then we will import that gizmo into the Foreign Trade Zone number 9, where I will distribute it out to Hawaii or maybe elsewhere in the country, and I'll sell my gizmo, and all of this will happen. The hub of that wheel in every way is this co-working space you're going to rent to me in the Foreign Trade Zone. So this is really, it's an incubator for international companies.
International trade, right. And that's why we call ourselves the hub of international trade down at Pier 2. That's what we're trying to do. And you know, when you talk about those making those connections, that's another initiative that we've been working on, not only from a manufacturer's end, but as an entity that does or is the in a sense the extension arm for import-export for the state, is to help connect those people with those companies. Like down at our facilities, we do have a majority of the customs brokers. Those are the people we were talking about before that help you get those items into the United States. A majority of the ones in Hawaii are at our facility at Pier 2. We have shipping people. The main shipper from China, NYK Logistics, is in our facility right there. We have the U.S. Commercial Export Assistance Center. That's John Holman and his group. He's at our facility at Pier 2. So again, what we're doing is bringing all those entities that actually support import-export into that facility as well. So instead of having to go around town to get them, you know exactly where to go. You know, Foreign Trade Zone at Pier 2, because they're all right there.
So this is, you're poised for a new chapter, a new and very active chapter in terms of making Hawaii an international co-working and import-export location.
And we are ripe for that. And the reason why I say that is because not only do we have a lot of family ties to Asia and to all those countries in the Pacific, but we have a lot of business ties as well. The reason why that's so attractive is because a lot of companies in Asia and the Pacific want to get their items or goods into the United States. We are that first step because not only, again, the families, but business ties. And we, in a sense, much like Texas, we speak the language of the Pacific Rim. We know those people out there. We understand the business practices. We understand the cultural practices and the cultural differences, and so we talk and connect in that language. Texas does that with the Latino community as well, down in that area, to get down to Mexico, Central America, down in South America. So in a sense, we do that for the Pacific Rim. And what a beautiful opportunity for a company that does want to, bring items into the United States. This is the first step. Bring it into Hawaii. If it's successful here, then we've got ties in the United States to be able to bring it into the rest of the United States.
So being so poised, seems to me, I'm going to ask you about challenges you have, but it seems to me that the biggest challenge of all, with all the resources and all the the acumen that you offer for these entrepreneurs, biggest challenge is finding the entrepreneurs, no?
It's finding the entrepreneurs, those people who are willing to take that step out. There are very few Hank Rogers, very few Hank Woos out there that have that acumen to be able to figure out how I can make this work. Do I have an idea? Do I have some widget? Do I have some thought that I want to try to bring and as an entrepreneur take those steps into doing it? And really that's what DBED itself is posed to do, is to be able to assist those companies to get them up on their feet, get them moving, and then get them into that program where they can then take off as a business. So it's finding those entrepreneurs, and then once you have those entrepreneurs established, they're looking to export. They want to get that out, and we're looking at the Pacific Rim to do that. That's an extremely difficult task because most people look at China and say, okay, China is where I want to go. That's one of the most difficult markets to get into. So that's where we bring in those people like John Holman at the U.S. Commercial Services. They say, you know what, your product may be suited for China, but that's going to be a hard nut to crack. Where can we find an entry point for you to get you up, to get that revenue you need to start building the business so that you can then start working those channels in China? Because it's going to take some time. So that's where they say, okay, is there someplace in Australia that your product would go well in? Is it Japan? Is it Southeast Asia? Is it Canada? So they have agencies throughout the world that they can connect you with and say, okay, do we have buyers that would look for this product? And that's where that particular component is very, very crucial, very critical to be able to set up that entryway, that connection. The other part is that we're the city-state partner for Import-Export Bank. There's been some talk about maybe defunding that or getting rid of that, but we see that as a very critical piece because we were talking about that before the show. You know, what about sending some of your product out? When are you going to get paid on that? You know, you as a young entrepreneur or somebody who's just starting out in that business, I need some sort of financial underwriting to be able to do that. Well, Import-Export Bank will help you not only buy the equipment that you're going to be using for production of your particular product that's going to be exported, but then they'll underwrite that shipment.
Factor it, yeah.
Yep, so if it's lost out at sea, you'll get your money back.
Yeah.
If it's lost because the person on the other end wasn't quite as up and up in their business as you'd hope they'd be, and they ran away with your product. And we just had somebody come to us probably about 2 weeks ago saying that's exactly what happened. I shipped my product out. I thought I had a connection with that guy. He disappeared. I'm lost. I'm out.
Well, I think with FTZ9, it's a cloth mother. You know, a cloth mother in the sense that it can help you.
Right.
And it will help you, and it has connections with commercial service, with the Import-Export Bank. I mean, these are huge benefits. And if you're just starting out, these benefits are absolutely important. That's David Sikkink. He's the administrator of FTZ9. We're here on ThinkTech Global on a given Monday, updating ourselves on FTZ9, and we know a lot more now. And I hope you look at this tape again, because there was so much here, chock-a-block with all that information. And contact them, ftz9.org. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Jay.
Aloha.